And then there's this little bit of an inlay and everything. It's just beautiful, and I enjoy it every day. I can work with it. So for me, I think a good product is doing what it's supposed to do in a really good way, usable way. But also I think design and aesthetics is an important point for me.
Today, my guest is Ralph Jocham. Ralph has over 23 years of experience applying Agile practices. He used Scrum internationally at blue-chip organizations on-site and distributed in various domains. Ralph taught over 9,000 students all over the world. He is also a regular speaker at conferences, companies, and events, and the author of the best-selling book, The Professional Product Owner. Ralph lives in Switzerland and is Europe's first professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org since 2010. This videocast is an episode of a series named Your Story, hosted by PST Mehdi Hoseini with the mission of sharing the professional life story of professional Scrum trainers and other advancing people with serious achievements in the product development world. So, if you enjoyed the videocast, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends and colleagues. Ralph Jocham, my friend, welcome to your videocast here today, and I appreciate that you gave me your time here. Okay?
Oh, it's my pleasure, Mehdi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much for accepting my invitation, Ralph. I really appreciate it, and I am happy that I have another opportunity to have a great interview with one of our PSTs, my colleagues here. And so let's do it together. Why not? Okay.
Like it's a plan. Yeah.
So I want to invite you to introduce yourself to our audience. Ralph, please.
Well, I'm Ralph. My background is computer science, so I started to work as a software engineer in '97. And essentially, the first two projects I've been working on, we pretty much delivered all the requirements on time, on scope, and budget. So we seem to be successful. But once we handed the product, the resulting product to the customers, they looked at it and said, "Thank you very much. I can't work with that." And that made me think, it's like, maybe there's more to what we do instead of like technology and some other things. And that's when I realized maybe process is important. And then I looked around and I discovered something called the unified process. Maybe some of you remember that. There was the unified process, UP, and the unified modeling language, UML.
UML, yeah.
And everything was around use cases. Instead of the system shell, you always had a use case. Kind of, this brings already in user centricity, if you think about it. And I've been following that from 98 till 2000. And then I ran into a book about extreme programming, kind of, which was really, wow, it turned everything upside down. But yeah, I thought this makes sense. So I tried it out with one of my teams I was working on. I set up the first continuous integration server in 2000. But then I also realized all of those practices with test-driven development, continuous integration, pair programming, and so on works really well. But how can you bring it more into the organization? And that's when I run into the book from Ken Schwaber and Mike Beadle about Scrum. Since then, I've been doing it in different places. So basically, originally I'm from Germany, and after about 2 years in Germany, I moved to the UK. I spent there a little bit more than 2 years working for Oracle. That's basically when I made the transition mentally to Agile. There was the big .com boom around as well. So that's when I moved to the East Coast in the US, in New York. Spent there a short year, then the .com bubble burst. And I was like so many other ones there as well. No, there were the things about those pink slip parties. And then I found another job in the Bay Area, San Jose, and a life science company. And I joined them. They were looking for someone which could help them to transition from the unified process, which they had been following religiously, do something more agile, for which I was a good fit. And I spent there 6 years helping to build up.
Wow. Which
process.
year was it? Which year was it? Which year?
2001, I basically moved to the Bay Area.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
And you stayed there for 6 years?
No. At the Applied Biosystems, I stayed 6 years. There was 8 years in California. Basically, and then in 2007, I helped them to build up processes, working on various products. One of them was a genetic sequencer, which was quite cool. And then in 2007, I joined ThoughtWorks out of their San Francisco office, and then worked with them with various clients in the Bay Area. And then in 2009, I moved back to Europe. And my wife, she's from the south of France. I'm from the south of Germany. So we agreed, let's meet somewhere in the middle. So I'm now living close to Bern in Switzerland, which is not really distance-wise in the middle, but traffic-wise it is somewhat.
So over the past 15 years, you have been living in Switzerland, yeah, right?
Yes. And so I think about myself a little bit like a digital nomad, getting around, and it was great. I learned a lot, and the different cultures, ways of thinking professionally as well, like how they approach different things. So, for example, this one thing in Germany, you would say, well, they read the user manual until they have everything understood before they switch on the device. And the saying is in the US, they turn on the device, they play around until it breaks, and then they take out the manual to find out what happened. So, and I think this is also a good analogy, because Agile goes more towards this, let's try something out and see what happens. And I think this is also a reason why maybe Agile was a little bit lagging in Europe compared to the US. Now it's there, but when I moved in 2009 from the US to Switzerland, there was still a difference. Now I don't think it's there anymore.
Cool. Yeah. So you had a technical background, in fact.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So my next question, Rolf, tell us your story about how you became a PST and why. Why did you choose PST?
Okay. Well, essentially, I believed in Scrum. Let's say early 2002, I was really working with that. We had a Scrum Master, all of those things, developers set up. We were doing the practices. And at some point, it was in 2005, I took my chef and we went to a CSM training from Scrum Alliance in 2005 in Palo Alto. And I said, hey, this is a chance, because what we're doing is here, and now there's someone who really knows about it, and we need to go and learn from that person directly. I think Dan Rawthorne was the guy. He was one of the first CSTs next to Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland. And so then we went. It was good I could take my chef with me, because then we could go back to work and apply it. And he basically drank from the same water hose I had drunk, and so essentially we had the same understanding, same belief in it, essentially. Now then, around 2006-07, when I also kind of left Applied Biosystems and joined ThoughtWorks, this is when I really thought about, this is something I like to do. I have experienced it. I like to work with people, so maybe I could become a CST as well. So I got into contact with Canon around 2008.
Because at that time, we didn't have Scrum.org. Scrum.org was founded in 2009.
A little bit later, yeah.
9.
So essentially, I was in contact with Ken about that. I was looking into the process, how this works. And at this point, there was already a little bit to talk about, because the only training out there was the CSM, Certified Scrum Master, which at Scrum.org is the Professional Scrum Master. Or let's say our training is better. But anyway, and there was this things about this Scrum developer training, because one Scrum Master up to 8 developers then. So the ratio, and there was also the understanding that even a good Scrum Master can't help 8 developers do good engineering, essentially, because you just need to teach them how this works as well. And there was this conversation about the Scrum developer training. And by this, then I was still very much engineering driven. So I was also in contact with them about, hey, you know, if you create that, because of all my past experience, what I've done, I want to be part of that. And in that context, I was also then basically Ken. I talked to Roman Pitchler and also Boris Gloger, which are kind of well-known CSTs in Europe.
Oh.
And then suddenly I got a notification, hey, Ken is at Scrum.org, not at Scrum Alliance anymore. And it's just, oops, what's going on? So, you know, and at some point I just had to make a call because one foot was over there, the other one was over there, because becoming a CST for the Scrum Master training was still Scrum Alliance. For the Scrum developer would have been Scrum.org. That would have been strange. So I just basically cut the cord and went all the way over to Scrum.org. And I became the first trainer in Europe for Scrum.org in March of 2010.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
I have been
In fact, the first
trained by Ken,
PSTs.
so that's
Yeah.
something I'm proud about, to be honest.
In fact, the first PSTs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And why did you choose a Scrum and not other, you know, frameworks or methodologies?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think there wasn't too much around at this point. I mean, everything we call Agile these days was pretty much created in the 90s. So in the 90s, we had EDO, Tom Gilp, but I only found this out later on. Then we had extreme programming, which is still around there, and I still believe it's good practices if you kind of look at it more at Agile more from an engineering point of view. Scrum, feature-driven development, crystal process, Alistair Coburn. I think we can put this also kind of some in the Agile category. I mean, I was reading about the crystal process. I was reading a lot of those things, but somehow, I don't know, Scrum, I could associate myself the most with that, and that's basically why I choose it. But there was no safe. There was so many other things weren't existing yet. Agile was really like this early movement in these early days, and now it's become a commodity pretty much. It's industry standard. Like even now, if I think back in trainings when I was talking about something 10 years ago, people were looking at me, really, you can do this? This works? Now I say, well, if you do this, yeah, we do this already. So, you know, there's so much has been achieved, which is good. On the other hand, now since Agile is pretty much a commodity, you see all the dirt with it coming to the surface as well, which is a little bit sad.
Yeah, got it. Okay, thanks for clarification, Ralph here. And my next question, I know that your main focus is on product ownership, specifically about your great book, I should say. I really love your book. I first read your book in 2018 when you published that one at that time. And could you please elaborate on the product ownership a little bit? And we want to hear product ownership from your side. How do you see it?
First of all, thanks for calling it product ownership and not product owner, because product owner is a title or a name, and ownership is really for me like putting up your sleeves, doing the work, being in there. Now, product ownership, looking into the future of it or where it is right now, I think there's a gloomy side of it and a dark, gloomy and a bright side of it. So now for the gloomy side, there's often still this belief out there that the product owner is essentially in charge of a feature factory. You throw them the product backlog items or whatever, and they crunch through it and they spit out the functionality. Scrum is not a feature. A Scrum team is not a feature factory. Well, if you would use it as a feature factory, at least it would be a highly effective feature factory, but the focus for a feature factory is on output, not an outcome. And that's a really big problem. And this is for me the gloomy part of often understanding product ownership, understanding Scrum. Now, for me, the really bright part, the shiny one about product ownership is that you have a product owner who is really in charge of a real product. Now, a real product has P&L, profit and loss. A real product has a customer which is normally external to the organization, to the company. Now, this would then also, or this implies essentially that we have a product owner who has the authority and the accountability for that very product. Now, product ownership is really about filling, and that's also something, you mentioned the book. This is what we talk most of it within the book is about filling the product management vacuum, how we call it. Because most often, pretty much all organizations, they have a clear company vision where they want to go and a business strategy in place. But how do you bring it onto the tactical level operations? How do you translate that? I think this is the biggest challenge, because too often I hear something like, well, someone has to make sure that this happens. Now, who is someone and how do you make sure, and what exactly is this? Now, this is really where everything boils down to, where we need to make sure that this is done correctly. And this is, for me, product ownership, filling this vacuum. And what I often see in organizations is, especially if they still are living in a project mindset, not in a product mindset, then the disconnect is basically filled with a project plan. Now, we have this by this time, and it can cost so much, the classical iron triangle: scope, schedule, budget. And this is not really what product ownership is about. Product ownership is really connecting that, translating the needs of the organization into what is needed, and communicating, translating that, working together with the developers. And again, developer doesn't mean only programmer. That's another big misconception. Developer could be a software engineer, a tester, a business analyst, a subject matter expert, a usability, UX person,
data analyst,
writer, you name it.
Data scientist,
lawyers on the teams as well, because we were doing legal stuff and they could help answer many of those questions. Now, we hear a lot about Agile is dead, Scrum doesn't work these days, and this clearly belongs to me in the category of the people who think about that Scrum is a feature factory. Because yes, in the long run, a feature factory is not successful. It does not allow for business agility. And I personally, I don't want to attack him. I like his work, clear thinking, but I think Mehdi Hoseini is really part of that group. And I'm really sorry about that. He hasn't done his homework, because if he would have looked into our work, maybe attended one of our trainings, he would clearly see that we think exactly how he is thinking. And for us, a product owner is what he sees as a product manager in that regard. Now, the other thing is doing a little bit of research here and there right now is that McKinsey actually got it right. So they really understand the product owner to be a person being in charge of a product, what the name actually insinuates. Now, for me, to go back to your question, like, how do you see the future of product ownership? Now, for me, the future is bright, because I think it's getting more and more clear what it really means. And there is now something coming up, which is often referred to as the product operating model.
Yeah, I have heard about it.
And for me, it's like, well, it's a different label or stamp on something which we talk about, because for me, the product operating model describes the synergy between Agile and product ownership in regards to what does the business want to achieve. And this is really how we can meaningfully fill the product management vacuum.
Cool. Yeah, good point of view, to be honest. And I think you are aware that you mentioned Mr. Mehdi Hoseini recently published a new book, specifically by focusing on this concept, product operating model. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering why you mentioned that he hasn't done his homework. Because I think we are both in the same direction, right?
Yeah, I was watching a video cast with him about a month ago, and where he said, like, every organization fire all your product owners.
Yeah, I have seen it.
And then basically, but when you read his work, which is great, honestly, I like his books and everything. It's just that what he talks about, what he equates with a product manager, this is what we equate with a product owner. And this is where my thinking is coming from.
Okay, cool. And what was your reason that you decided to write that book as well?
You mean the book?
Yeah, your book.
Yeah.
The Professional Product Owner.
Well, that's another longer story here. So I was at Agile 2015, and so Don, the co-author, we were. I think it's a 5-day conference. Probably was Tuesday, and we just basically went to the same talk. I mean, as a PST, you just hang out together there, and I talked to him about favorite trainings and so on. So for me, it's this product owner. I said, yeah, and then we also talked about, I think this training should be more like this or more like that. And he said, yeah, yes, I agree. We really connected immediately. So instead of going to other talks, we went to the bar, we got some martinis, and we took out our laptops, and we just said, let's reshuffle some of the slides and maybe change the training how we would like to see it. And this is pretty much what we did at this conference. We didn't do anything else apart from giving talks. We thought we'd get through everything by Friday. Now it was suddenly Friday, and we only had covered about half of the training. And then the question was, what do we do? Do we throw it away, or do we keep on working on that? So we agreed to keep on working on that. So for the next couple of months, we went through everything until we had the training as we wanted it to be, kind of from our experience working with products, developing products. Then we proposed this back to Scrum.org, to Ken Schwaber, who was more active at this point still, and Dave West. And they liked it. And essentially, then this was also the initiation of the steward model at Scrum.org. So then Don and I, we became the creators and curators of the PSPO training, which we had been then for a couple of years. And
really? I didn't know.
Essentially, then you pass it on to someone else so that new ideas come into. Now it's slightly different, but essentially every training had 2 stewards taking care of the training at this point.
So you were the first ones. Yeah,
we were the first ones. We basically were the initiating idea behind the steward model at Scrum.org, I guess.
And which year was it? 2016?
This was then, I think, early 2016 that the steward model was created.
About your training?
Then in 2000, now back to your original question. So in 2016, I was giving a presentation at Scrummy London. And I sat down with Dave West, and we just chatted a little bit. And then somebody said, Rolf, we need a book about product ownership.
That's a good one.
And I looked at him and just said, I know what you're thinking there. So I had never thought about writing a book, honestly. Then in the evening, Europe, Don is based in Texas, Dallas. So in the evening, I chatted with Don and just said, hey, how do you feel about writing a book? And he said, yeah, okay. Yeah, let's give it a try. And basically, that's how we started. I think the next week we sat down and we started writing the book.
Awesome. But maybe one question here. You published it on 2018, right? But up to now, you haven't released a new version of it. Is there any specific reason for that? Or maybe you have a plan for that? I don't know.
So we talked about it. So about every year, Don and I, shall we update it or revise the... Now I've been talking to other authors, and essentially their advice is, as long as you're not embarrassed about the content, it's still good enough. And I am not. I still think this book is good. I mean, the Scrum Guide has been updated since then. The EVM Guide has been updated since then. But what's in there is still good. And I mean, it has 4.8 stars on Amazon. Like if you turn the reviews into an NPS, it's around 80%, which is pretty good. Over close to 800 reviews. So the book is still doing good. So I'm just, I'm a little bit maybe also afraid about, do you make it worse? Because I had read books Like, for example, the book about extreme programming, the second edition, I don't think it was as good as the first one. Maybe there's a little bit of fear as well. So maybe going back to your question, I think once I'm embarrassed about the content in there, just, this is really now outdated. This has changed. I think then we'll do it.
Okay, so good reason. Yeah, thanks. And let me ask you an interesting question.
Sure.
I know that you are a product man, okay? So could you please name the two most amazing products you have ever seen and why you see them as high quality products?
Well, I mean, one of them is my Apple Watch.
Wow.
I mean, I'm looking at this now from a personal perspective, and the Apple Watch is just great. I mean, I'm a little bit of a statistics geek. So I like to see numbers and trends and how things change. And I'm currently training for a marathon. So if I go running, I see all my dates and I can go back and look at it on my iPad or my phone to see how things are hopefully improving with my performance and everything. So I know when I'm running, I get my heart rate, I get my distance, I get altitude, I get everything I need. But once in a while, I also like to play golf. I get the distance to the tee. I can look at my watch and I get all the information. So it also tells me you probably should use that clock for the distance. It's like a small caddy as well if you think about it. In the morning when I wake up, I can look at my watch and it tells me, hey, you had a good night's rest. You kind of had these and these sleep patterns and everything. And again, as I said, I like number statistics, so I really like to look at that and tweak it a little bit here and there. So the other thing is, like, usually when I have to solve a problem or to think about something, I really read into it, and then I put on my running shoes and then I go for a run, and then my brain I don't try to think about it, but my brain just does it essentially, and then I have great ideas. And it happened to me so often that I had a great idea, just this is it. And then once I was home, I forgot about it. So there's the other thing is you can just make a simple voice recording. Now I'm running. It's sometimes a little bit hard to hear what I'm really saying with my breathing going on, but I just make a quick recording, bang, I'm back from the race. I sit down, take a shower, back at my desk, and I listen to it, and then I just follow up on it immediately. So this is really a product I like, kind of more from the digital space. So, and because I was knowing that you were asking this question, this is another one, and I have to be careful because this thing is razor sharp, and this is a really specific knife.
Wow.
So one of the things is really like my pastime is cooking. Like if I'm in the kitchen and I can chop something up, I'm a happy camper. And I got this for my family for my 50th birthday, and it's from a Japanese iron manufacturing company that have been making knives for over 700 years.
700, wow.
It has 31 layers, and 31 because you have 15 layers on every side, and then the really hard one in the center. And you can even like maybe see it a little bit like kind of the different layers and everything.
There are some patterns on it, yeah?
Yeah. And it has a hardness of 63 HRC. So I'm not sure if this tells you anything, but it's pretty hard. Like a regular knife sharpener would break because this knife is harder than the sharpener. So you have to use specific devices. But once you have a really good edge on it, on the blade, it stays like this for a really long time. So you don't have to sharpen it all the time. It's well balanced. No, the handle is made out of the hardest wood on earth. It's a specific tree growing in the desert really slowly. And then there's this little bit of an inlay and everything. It's just beautiful, and I enjoy it every day. I can work with it. So for me, I think a good product is doing what it's supposed to do in a really good way, usable way. But also, I think design and aesthetics is an important point for me in that regard as well. And here I have everything.
Wow, awesome. In fact, the experience that you get from using that product is truly important for you. The user experience, we can say, right?
Yeah.
And the expectations that you have as the user of the product. For example, about the Apple Watch that you mentioned, it seems that you have all the required data to monitor your health right on your hand.
Yeah.
It's close to you. Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine why you say it's a quality product. Like it.
Yeah, it gives me all the numbers. And the other thing is I have the version where I can also like, I don't have to take the phone with me when I'm running, because if something would happen, I could just make a phone call from the iPhone. So that's another thing. It's like, this is really everything in one place. And it makes, so, in the past, I always had mechanical clocks, watches, because I said now those digital ones and whatever. No, I want to have a real, and some of them they had like a glass back end. You could really see like the wheels and the springs moving and everything. And this was a watch for me. That's something I wanted to have on my wrist. But then the Apple Watch came along and I tried it out.
Yeah.
And I went back. So all my other nice watches, which are from an engineering point of view and a mechanical point of view, are outstanding and it's still impressive. They are now kind of collecting dust in a drawer.
Yeah. And it reminded me of another watch. You have it in Switzerland, Rolex, I mean, which is a luxury watch. And we know that many people all around the world want to have it, and they see it with another point of view, and they call it a quality product as well. But it seems quality depends on who is seeing that product. Yeah, right? Because
you're in the eye of the beholder. Yeah. So when I look at it and says, "Oh, this is awesome," and I might just say, "No, I don't see it the way you do," and that's really an important aspect here as well. Yeah. But Rolex is good, but over here they say, "Yeah, Rolex is like a good truck. It's reliable, it works." But if you really want to have a good watch, you would go for Philippe Patek or an IWC or something like that. So there's layers on top of that as well.
Oh, I haven't heard about them. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Now some of them they cost like, I don't know, 50,000. No, some of them even you could buy a house for.
Yeah. And we talked about Apple.
Yeah.
Are you aware how they work? Because we see that almost all of their products are amazing, So what type of processes do they use that they can, build this great products, I should say?
I have never been an Apple. I had some colleagues when I was in the Bay Area working there, so we chatted a little bit. So everything they were allowed to talk about. They really, no, the thing I really kind of remember when I also was kind of doing some reading about Steve Jobs and so on. He, for example, said, if you have a cupboard and you take out one of those shelves, turn it around and see how the backside of the shelf is being done. Because sometimes it just looks nice in the beginning, on the outside, the veneers, everything, but once you take it out and you look at it behind people don't
it's
see
not the same.
like how they cut corners and they're cheap. And he said, this is how you see quality, and this is really some of the regards how I all think about it. So they really bring in the customer focus, they really bring in usability to a high degree. And for example, now it's pretty much not there anymore, but iTunes, when it came out in, I think, 2002, if I remember it right, they didn't develop that on it. They bought a product from somebody who developed a product to manage music's downloads, MP3s, and things like that. And the first thing they did is they spent most of the time removing features. Because they said, what is the core idea behind that product? And those 10 features, let's get them right. And that's what they did essentially. And I think this is what they do really well. They find out for so many products, they overload you. You could do everything with it somehow, but nobody knows how it really works. And this is especially the case if you have a product, and I'm guilty as charged. I mean, this is what I did in the early days as well. It's like as an engineer, we need this feature as well. So you add a button at the top right, do this or something like that. And you know what this button is doing, but everybody else wouldn't. But they really always look at it from a user perspective. How do they use us? And they have the right laboratories video eye movement, hand movement,
Oh,
and so on to see like where are people struggling, and then they smooth it out.
oh, cool, cool. And do you think that they use a Scrum?
I wouldn't say it's Scrum per se, I guess, as in the textbook, but something very similar to that.
Or at least
And
we can say empiricism, for example.
I would say so. They use an empirical mindset. They go forward and backwards. They run experiments to try it out. They learn from what's going on. And again, this is like information I had many, many years ago when I was in the Bay Area. It might have changed in the meantime. But it's really, for them, it's people need to understand. And if you really think about it, if you now buy an iPad or iPhone or something like that, there's no user manual anymore.
Yeah.
It's expected you take it out of the box, and it's expected, you know how this works. You know, you turn it on and it says hello, and then it asks you which language do you want me to communicate with you, and then it explains the things, and you just go through that, and you're done. My father is 85, my mom is 80. She does everything on an iPhone, and
Wow. Wow.
there has to be a reason behind that. Maybe, and it's funny because some of other people I know, they are on a different system and they struggle a little bit more, in my opinion. But that's just my personal experience.
Oh, okay, cool, cool. So let's return back to our world as a Scrum. How do you serve the market, Ralph?
Well, when I came back to Europe, now Switzerland, I was first working again with an Agile, with a consulting company, and I helped them to build up the Agile offerings. And in 2011, I founded my organization, Effective Agile, where I give trainings from Scrum.org, but also do consulting, coaching. So the three pillars basically my business is running on is consulting, coaching, and trainings. Whereas now that's the thing about coaching, and I think I'd rather do a little bit of more consulting, because coaching means you're always with your client, and I'm not really fond of that, because if you make them dependent on you, if you spoon feed them all the time, they don't start to think for themselves. You know, you never take off the training wheels. And I just tell them, you know what, I will be with you. Maybe usually my sprints are 2 weeks for one sprint, and then I start to pull out, because I want you to fall off the bike, get bloody knees, you know, have all of these, and think for yourself. And then I'm happy to help you. And this is more like when the consulting then comes in, going in there, looking at things, giving some ideas, helping them, and then zooming out again until something else happens again. So this is kind of my approach, how I usually do it. Some clients appreciate it. It's also cheaper for them. On the other hand, some ones, they just say, you know, just help us. And different mindsets here. But then also trainings, Scrum.org trainings and other trainings as well, all around basically agile, complexity, product, and so on.
And these days, which courses are your main focus?
My main focus obviously is all around product ownership, product owner in that regard.
PSPO, PSPOA, yeah?
Yes, and now the product backlog management skills as well, which is a great training. You know, this is also one of the things, because, you know, I had people that come to my PSPO, that come to PSPOA, and then I just say, you know what, there's this training, and then they come to the product backlog management, PSP, BMS training as well. And they just, this training was great. It really kind of brought so many things together, which for me is like a little bit of a shock, because I would expect that, you know, once they have done those two trainings and applied Scrum, they should know all the answers about what we talk about in the product backlog management skills training. But it showed me that there's still so many things, nuances, small things and bits and pieces between the bigger things. People maybe haven't really got through the training, or maybe have forgotten after the training, because, you know, business reality takes over, and you often get pushed back into some other mindsets, behavioral schemas. So this is, in this regard, it's a good kind of training at some point afterwards as well to just, this is what product ownership, product backlog management is all about.
And it is a one-day course, right?
It's a one-day course, yes. And that makes it also attractive because to get out of office for 1 day is easier than for 2 days.
Okay, cool. And how can our audience find you? Your website or other things?
Well, you can find me on Scrum.org. So go to the Find a Trainer area, type in Ralph with BH or Jocham, Jocham, or you will find me. Or maybe look for languages, German, English. These are the languages I teach my classes.
Yeah.
And otherwise, you can go to effectiveagile.com. That's my company.
Effectiveagile.com.
Yes.
Yeah, I will add it in the caption of this YouTube interview as well. Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. And let me ask you another question.
Okay.
You are in this industry for more than 20 years. Yeah. It is obvious that you have read a lot of books as well. So if you wanted to introduce 2 wonderful books, more than your own book, okay, what would that be?
I was thinking about it quite a bit, and I could bring it down to 3 books. So first
okay, that's okay. Feel free.
One is a great one. This is 2002. Ken Schwaber, Mike Beadle.
Wow, Agile software. Yeah,
software development using Scrum. Then another one which I have as a Kindle book only, but it's Creativity Inc. from Ed Catmull. And it's brilliant. It's really the story behind Pixar. When we all know those animations, then Pixar was bought by Disney or the other way around.
Yeah.
How you think and look at it, it depends. But this book is really about leadership. What does good leadership mean? It's really interesting. So it's I know I get goosebumps if I just think about these books. There were passages in there, sections where I just say, wow, what's going on here, kind of.
Sorry, what was the name? What was the name? Sorry.
Creativity Inc.
Oh yeah, I have heard about it.
Yeah, it's really, read this book if you have some time or vacation in the summer. Take the book with you and read it. It's amazing. It's really, for me, it's the best book about leadership.
Oh really?
Cool. Yeah. And then the third one is this one here, System Thinking. Managing chaos and complexity. So this book really brings so many things together, and this took me about half a year to get through, but it really connected so many dots for me. And the way I think about it now, why these 3 books? For me, Scrum is the process behind it, and the way we want to do it kind of on a daily basis or on a sprint basis, iterative and incremental. Now, the book Creativity Inc. from Ed Catmull about leadership, this is really like, this should be the principles, the philosophy about running an organization. But all of that happens in the complex. Our world is not linear. Everything is intertwined. Weird changes there have weird effects over there. And this is kind of then where this book comes into the picture. It really makes you appreciate so many more things. Now, once I read this book, I understood politics better, because if you think about how parties act, there's certain patterns behind that, and it's really well explained in there as well. And then you can take that concept also into maybe company politics and how you can handle them and so on. So these are the 3 books I would probably recommend any one of you.
Awesome. And when was it written? The last one?
It's the 3rd edition already. Let me look into, I can tell you in a second. This is 2011.
2011. The 3rd edition.
The 3rd edition, yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure if this is the first edition when it came out or the 3rd edition, but it says 2011.
Okay, cool. Then our audience can find it on Amazon or somewhere else.
If you want to, I can also send you the details, the links to Amazon or something.
Yeah, that's a good one. Why not? Yeah. Thanks.
Now, this book exist anymore
Uh-huh.
to buy it. And because I just thought, you know what, I get it as a Kindle one because sometimes I look for certain keywords if they have been used in the past as well. But this is not available as a Kindle book. And now if you buy it, you have to buy it used and it's really expensive. So I think this thing is a collectible.
It's like a heritage, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 cool, cool. And yeah, liked it. Maybe another question. Um, I want to know your idea about the future of Scrum. Ralph, how do you see it?
I had asked this question, Ken, many years ago.
Uh-huh.
Kind of when I became a trainer in 2010, I thought, well, maybe a couple of more years, then the hype around Scrum will be over, and then it was another 14 years pretty much. And I still don't think it's maybe we have plateaued, but if you think about it, it doesn't mean you fall down immediately. It might slowly kind of get a little bit less over time, if at all. This is the other question. Now, when I was asking this question to Ken, he said, maybe it's not called Scrum at any point in the future, but I believe what Scrum has achieved is that people think and act differently in the future.
Oh.
And this is all that matters to me. And I just thought, wow, this is a really great answer because on the other hand, he invented Scrum, he's associated with the name. Now, if Scrum would go away, his identity might be going away as well, but he just said he doesn't worry about that. He just is happy that essentially, Scrum has been successful in helping people solving complex problems, making better products, maybe having some good impact on the earth. And so how do I think about the future of Scrum? I still think it's really relevant. I think the ideas about working in shorter time frames, bringing in focus, having self-management, focusing on vertical slices as the increments at the end of the sprint, which is, if you think about complexity theory, a really strong enabling constraint. Because this is really like the total transparency you can have. Do we have something working, yes or no? If the answer is no, well, you have a big problem. If the answer is yes, great. You might not be where you want to be, but at least you have something which is working. So I think the ideas behind Scrum are still absolutely correct.
Yeah.
There might be some changes about team compositions and some other ideas here and there. I've seen some changes with the Scrum Master. In the beginning, the Scrum Master was really not the person with the whip, but the person who kicked some assets. I say, come on, get it done. I can help you, but we need to find an answer, like pushing a little bit. And that's okay. Just don't overdo it all the time. And then suddenly there was this movement back to, oh, well, as a Scrum Master, you're a servant leader. You don't push people. You always ask them if they want to, kind of. And for me, often life is a pendulum. It goes from one extreme to the other one. And then it was over there. It's like, yeah. And I think suddenly the Scrum Master was this person without teeth, they couldn't really have an impact. Which there's some elements in there as well. But I think for me, the truth is in the middle. And the way I think about it is like parents, you love your children, you do everything you can do for them to understand the world, to have a good education, stay healthy, all of these things. And you, instead of yelling at them, you might sit down and just say, this is how it works. Let me give you an example. You spend some time with them, that they have good learnings, understanding. But there might be also moments where you just say, stop, don't do this. Because you sense if they would do that, they could get hurt or something bad could happen. And both is right. It depends on the context. So there's no, and this again, context, when is context important? When you work in the complex. And I think working as a Scrum Master with a team in an organization is also a complex construct. So this is where I think the Scrum Master probably has to recalibrate a little bit, which is happening right now. Because often there's now the saying also, oh, we don't need a Scrum Master anymore or something that I think a good person leading a team, having all those different perspectives on there is really valuable. I've seen it. I would always do it this way.
Okay.
So I see the future of Scrum still bright. For the next years, for sure. I'm not sure what's happening in 10, 20 years, but right now
At the moment. Just keep going at the moment. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. And Rolf, you have spent many years of your life in the product ownership environment. How do you describe a great product owner?
A great product owner is a person who is really in love with the problem. So and this goes also back, is like, I think the first question is always, is the problem worth fixing? Is this problem important enough? Because far too often as the organization, we need this, we need that. They think too much in the what, in the answer space. But the first thing we need to look at, is this problem big enough? Is it worthwhile fixing? And if you're really obsessed about this problem and you're the product owner to fix that, you will be a good product owner, because then you will do all the things to understand the problem, understand the pains associated with it, all of those things, and then you can turn that into the right answer, into the right outcome, not just output, but the right outcome for the users to fix that. So being really, I would even say, obsessed with the problem, but then also be a good person for stakeholder management. This is another very important aspect of product ownership. And users are a type of stakeholders, but then there's other influencers. So therefore, groups of stakeholders, users, influencers, providers, and governance. Now, influencers could be highly important people. You need to navigate them as well, keep them happy. Then providers, everything you depend on. So you need to make sure you understand them correctly, maybe push at the right moment, but be a little bit flexible in other moments, and situational awareness. And then governance, these days we have tons of regulations, laws and stuff we have to follow. These are all the authorities you have to be in contact with and cope with. But also internal governance. Sometimes, especially in large organizations, you need to provide specific numbers at certain times. So have them available to this as well. So stakeholder management effectively done is another really important aspect. But then also being able to collaborate, be a good storyteller, because the vision of the product and the current product goal, I think this is really important. This is why we spend all the money, and you shouldn't get tired of, hey, this is what we're doing, this is great, and talking about it again. And maybe the next day, next person, hey, this is great, this is what we're doing. If you're really in love with kind of all of that, then you will be a good product owner.
And I have heard about a specific thing about product owner responsibility, which is recommended they even live in the daily life of their users to understand problems, firsthand, right in the middle of the life of the final user or end user.
Yeah.
How do you see it?
I had once a product owner. She was at a company and she came in to replace and said, hey guys, don't expect me to be around. I'll be in the call center for the next 2 weeks.
Oh.
For the product. She was picking up the phone when people were complaining.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Like that.
Yeah. So I really think we have to put on the boots of our users, and I'm not sure if this is something you say in English, but put on the shoes of the user, walk in them for a mile and see, why does it hurt? Where is it comfortable? And get this understanding, because only once we get this empathy towards them, the understanding about what really bothers them, we can find the answer, because then we have identified the underlying problems and then we can find answers.
But we see that many product owners just focus on, writing features. I don't know how I can explain it, and they just think they are responsible just for the product backlog, not talking with the end user to understand them, as you mentioned, understanding the problem itself first. So what is your advice to these people to improve their level of product ownership?
So in the Scrum Guide, there's this beautiful sentence. This product owner may do the above work or may delegate the responsibility to someone else. However, the product owner remains accountable. Now, responsibility, accountability, most languages don't have this nuance. In English, it's there, and I think this is really great. So now, if you really think about it, a product owner should be more on the strategic side of things. Talking to stakeholders, talking to users, and that. Now, who does all the work about writing product backlog items, clarifying it? Well, you could do it if you have the time, but if you're really doing the strategic things right, you probably don't have enough time left in the end of the day. So this is when you have to delegate some of the responsibilities. And for me, product backlog management, many of the things I would delegate into the team, to the developers. Now, if you go back and the developers are not just in quotes here, big quotes, programmers or software engineers, but also business analysts, subject matter experts, and so on. You can just say, "Yo, guys, I just talked to this customer. They're having this and this problem. Could you find an answer to that?" And write it down. Maybe I put an item into the product backlog. And then you would look at it together again later on, maybe the following week, says, "Okay, so what have you come up with?" And you give them feedback. Maybe while you talk about it, you break it down into smaller pieces. That's often referred to as refinement. Into smaller pieces, maybe you discover some acceptance criteria and other elements which are important, maybe some laws and regulation you have to follow for this one as well, and so on. And if you do this, the developers essentially become small product owners for themselves. Because they wouldn't just get something handed over, do that, and then once they have done it and you tell them, "Oh, this is not what I wanted," they can always say, "But this is how you wrote it. It's your bad because you wrote it wrong." Now, but if you tell them what's important and the developers create their own product backlog items and they later on take them and implement them and it's wrong, the blame is on them because they didn't do it correctly somehow. So the way I think about it as a product owner, you should always be available, approachable. You should always have your phone on, regardless which day of the week, which time, to answer all of the questions which come up. But you shouldn't necessarily do the tactical operational work. Delegate that to the team.
And it helps them to move towards self-management.
Exactly. That's also not changed because in the past it was self-organization, and then you have self-management. So self-management contains self-organization plus the what. So the what is much more given also now to the whole Scrum team because now the Scrum team is self-managing, not self-organizing, it's self-managing. That means you could even delegate them. So some pieces to look into and define it and put into the product backlog. And the way you can think about it, especially in a scaled environment, is saying, "This is my product backlog. Don't touch it. This is mine. Everything you do there goes to me." And you would become a bottleneck by definition. Or you could just say, "You know what? Hey, this is the product backlog, guys. Work with it. Whatever. If you think it's important, let me know. But here it is. It's yours as well." Now, this one will not scale. You will be fully in control. You would always know what's going on. Over here, this will scale really well, but there might be things happening you should be aware of a little bit more. Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. But that's what you have to find for yourself as a product owner. What is the right way for me to collaborate with the developers and the product backlog?
Yeah, loved it. Cool. So maybe the last question, the conversation was sweet. I don't want to finish it, but our time
maybe we have another time.
is about to be off. But my last question, we have the new concept of product goal in the recent Scrum Guide 2020, but I know that many teams have problem with that. They are struggling with it, to how to define it, how it can help them. Specifically, I have heard many times in my classes, we cannot just have one product goal each time. Probably we need to have multiple product goals and something like this. First of all, how do you see this concept? And what are your advice to people and teams who want to use it effectively?
So in the Scrum, again, there's the sentence, there is only one product goal at a given time, which is either abundant or completed before you move on
Something
to
like
the next
this.
one, something along those lines.
Fulfilled, I guess.
Now, the way I think about it, there's the vision of our product, and this could be years out. And that's our North Star. This is the point for orientation. This gives us direction. But say here we are right now, how should we move? And if the stretch is too long, just working for, let's say, for 2-3 years with sprint goals is a little bit too without enough orientation, enough direction. So this is where the product goal comes into the picture. Now, the way I work with it is that my product goals tend to be 4, 5, 6 months out. Maybe it could be a little bit longer, could be a little bit shorter, but somewhere this is kind of the sweet spot. So if I would now start a new development effort for a new product, my next product goal would probably be somewhere September, October range. Say, hey, by September, we need to have this specific business outcome. Now we have to have this in place or that. Could be anything. And then you really focus on that and work towards this. Now, if you're working in a more faster moving environment, maybe your product goals are a little bit more frequently, maybe 3 months, 2 months, something like that. But it's always the next big thing to put your teeth in towards your vision of the product. So you would have your vision, your current product goal, and then the sprint goals going to each one of those. Next product goal. And if people tell me what we have to have more product goals, then I ask them, so which one of those ones is more important? Well, this one, and I say, do this first. Because otherwise you end up in task switching mode, and we all know task switching is a productivity killer. Now, the problem with task switching is our brain likes it. It produces endorphin. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel productive. But statistically, it's proven. It kills productivity. Now, if you have several things in parallel running, people will always task switch. You will probably also have a problem coming up with a decent sprint goal. Now, a sprint goals in Scrum overall, they always describe an outcome, never an output. So if you struggle coming up with a good sprint goal, which describes an outcome, you have another really big problem because you can't provide focus for that sprint really. You wouldn't get to a commitment from the developers. Now, if you work on several product goals in parallel, how would you define your sprint goal? Oh, do something here, do something for this goal, and do something for this one here. Then your sprint goal would be a shopping list. Now, what would you show in the sprint review? Some bits and pieces here, some bits and pieces there. It would be boring. Nobody would show up to the sprint review. And this is the way you can think about it. I mean, this is a little bit talking about Scrum in general, but this is really the transparency Scrum gives you. If nobody shows up to the sprint review, what are you doing wrong? Maybe your sprint goals are not outcome oriented and it's just a shopping list. So why are your sprint goals a shopping list? We don't have focus. Why don't we have focus? Because we work on too many things in parallel. Bang, 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 go up and fix each one of them. And this is where I look at the Scrum Master. If you work as a Scrum Master, that's why I'm looking at you. Fix that and help the organization to become more agile.
Cool. Awesome. Liked it. Thanks, Rolf. So, as the closing question, if you wanted to squeeze your life into just one sentence, what would that be?
Well, if you can put my life into one sentence, I'm not sure if I listed it full. But if I would have to describe my life's mantra in one sentence, it would be curious and rather ask for forgiveness than permission.
Awesome. Liked it.
Okay,
Rolf. Thank you very much. It was an amazing conversation. I really loved it. Really.
Thank you, Mehdi.
Is there anything else as the final things you want to share with our audience? Feel free.
No, actually, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you here. It was like chatting to a friend at a table in a restaurant. I didn't feel like a formal conversation or anything. No, I mean, if you like the conversation, if you liked what I was talking about in regards to product ownership, I do most of my trainings virtual these days. I like to travel a little bit less, so maybe we can see us there, and I would be happy to have you there as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I believe that you shared a lot of valuable things that many people can learn from. I appreciate it. And again, thank you very much for being here and accepting my invitation. And now we can close our conversation. Ralph, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.